All right, here we are on another episode of Man to Dad. Now, we're always kind of jumping around a little bit, me talking with one dad at a time. And while that's been an interesting adventure to listen to what all the different dads that I've spoken to have to say about themselves as men in the world, what they have to say about being parents, but it's kind of one-sided. So today I'm actually being joined by a father and son, so we can get a little bit of an idea of what their relationship is like. We'll see what kind of things that they may have never said to one another before might come out, if there's anything. But we might just get a really good look at what the whole relationship is, how that progresses over time, what kind of thoughts and feelings they have looking back. So I want to welcome my two guests here today for joining me and for being vulnerable to enough to do this for where it's going out to. So thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah, no problem. No problem.
All right. So I'm going to kind of go back and forth. I know I've sent you some questions ahead of time to kind of give you a little heads up for what we're going to do. But I want to start off with our dad today, who's had the benefit of watching his son grow up. So I want to ask you, what was it like for you, not so much with your son, but for yourself, growing up with your dad? What was that generation like? What was that time like?
Yeah, that generation, I guess back in the 50s, 60s, we moved from Halifax, Nova Scotia to Montreal when I was 5. So I was born in 53, I guess 58, we moved here to Montreal. And Montreal in that time was, crazy place. It always has been. And my relationship with my dad back then, most dads, if I can remember, were pretty stoic. They were the major breadwinners in the families. A lot of the mothers stayed at home, were stay-at-home moms. Large families. Where I grew up in Montreal, most families had a minimum of 3 kids.
Mm-hmm.
We had 8 in ours.
Wow.
Yeah, so 2 brothers and 8 sisters, and so my dad was really working hard. So it was difficult for him, I imagine, and didn't have a lot of time to spend with the kids. Always out working. He worked in Halifax, Nova Scotia. He worked as on the CNR train, and it's one of the reasons why we came to Montreal, because he was always getting a layover in Montreal. So eventually, well, I might as well just move to Montreal, and that's what we ended up doing. So yeah, growing up with him was great. A lot of family memories, but individual memories of me and my dad were not a lot, because didn't have a lot of time to spend with each one of his children, type of thing. So. Yeah.
Okay, but he was the kind of father who wanted to spend a lot of time with his kids.
Yeah, he always wanted to spend a lot of time with the kids, but so we did that in terms of family get-togethers more than individually with each child, type of thing. So, yeah.
Do you feel like there was anything missing?
I would have liked to have known a little bit more about him as an individual, yeah.
Okay.
But no, I mean, when you're a child growing up and in your teenage years, you kind of ask yourself questions, but then as you become a man, you understand why the relationship was like that, and you get a bit more insight as to what it is to be a father for a family of 8 kids. So,
right.
Yeah, pretty difficult.
So how many kids do you have?
I have 2.
2. Okay.
2 amazing kids.
Right.
Yeah.
Only one of which I managed to coerce to be here today. Well, that's okay. Yeah. What do you feel you learned from your dad? Because you mentioned questions, as you're a teenager, and then you become a man. Those things kind of get answered. But what do you think that you learned from your dad and your relationship with him?
Responsibility. You're from the point and from the time that you and your wife decide to have kids, you realize very quickly that there's a major responsibility there. So what I learned from my dad was responsibility, and trying to keep the families together was not always easy, providing for the kids.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and every family is different, right? There are different levels of status, if you wish.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, he had to work really hard, and that's what I learned from my dad. Responsibility. I did never felt unloved because he had to spread that love out amongst 8 kids, type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you always like looking at them, you know, looking at your mother and father, and listening, and yeah, and you know, but yeah, it's basically just responsibility and some of the things that he would discuss with mom and stuff like that, and yeah.
So best moments as a child with you and your father. What were your best moments?
He taught me how to swim. I remember once going to a beach with him, probably in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and no, I'm sorry, it was not Halifax, Nova Scotia. It was in Montreal.
Okay.
And what, I guess I'm not sure where the beach was, but he taught me how to swim. And his version of teaching me how to swim, I just got on his back. He told me to put my arms around his neck, and he went under.
Right.
So
Right. Yeah.
I had to hold my breath, and he came up, and yeah, that type of thing. And a lot of picnics. We did a lot of picnics because that was when he had some time off. Was usually on a Sunday, so we'd go and do picnics. You know, yeah. And we were a bunch of guys, bunch of kids. So and with friends sometimes, and boyfriends and girlfriends, mostly on my sister's side of things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was picnics, that type of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the swimming thing. That's how they used to do things, right? You can't do that with kids now,
Yeah.
because you don't know how they might feel about this. You know, what kind of emotions are going to come up,
Yeah.
if they want to do that or not.
Yeah.
You know, it's what do you think of that versus, you know, that time?
Well, I guess for me as an individual, my father's an individual, kind of worked. I mean, I held my breath, and you know, and I can swim today. So
Right. Yeah, there's a certain independence that
Yeah.
that you learn and
Yeah.
figuring stuff out versus today.
yeah, first is today. First of all, there's a lot more knowledge today of how to teach kids, because there's never a recipe book, right? We're all individuals.
Right.
As children, as fathers, as people growing up as men. So there's no recipe. And so because of that, there are a lot of generalizations today on how you should teach kids, you know,
Mhm.
from a parent's perspective. Whereas in those days, you know,
Yeah.
you did the best you could.
Right. So if you were a parent now, what would you subscribe to the way that it used to be done, or the way it's done now?
I don't know. I don't know, because when our kids were younger, the method for teaching kids how to swim was to bring them to people who had a certificate in swimming and
Right.
certificate in teaching kids how to swim.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So that's what we did. You know.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And so, what would be? Because it's all been sounding pretty good. So, are there
Yeah.
any moments where you look back and you go, "That was probably the worst moment"?
You're talking in terms of my relationship with my dad?
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
And again, it was, yeah, actually there was a time where I started working in Montreal, kind of part-time during high school. And because he was so stoic, he would drive me there and not say a word in the car, type of thing, you know? And I only thought about that like later. Never thought about it, you know? So
Right.
that we would drive to my work, and not much we'd said. He'd say, "Have a good day." I'd say, "Have a good day," and that was it. So I'd go off to work, and then the next time we spoke about work or anything like that would be probably on a Sunday during a picnic type of thing. So
Right,
that's it,
right.
yeah,
Okay.
different.
Yeah.
Totally different.
Yeah. Way different time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't now we try to communicate as much as we can with our kids. What are you thinking? What are you doing? And
Absolutely.
keep the conversation going. Like,
Absolutely.
they're going to get bored if, you know,
Yeah.
we don't realize that value in the peace.
Yeah.
You know, just be, you know, you don't have anything to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are you going to talk about?
Yeah.
Right?
That's it. Yeah.
Okay. So now I wanna switch gears a little bit and
Sure.
ask what your best moments as a dad are.
As a dad,
Yeah.
first of all, just
And by the way, I'm watching every facial expression.
Oh, you mean
so.
now?
Yes,
or,
now.
not
as
when they were first born, because for me,
yeah,
the birth of my son and my daughter was amazing. I'm slightly religious, so my mom was very religious, so I guess I've carried that forward in myself, and so when my son and my daughter were born, for me it was like, blessing.
Hmm.
I remember for Christopher when he was born, came out of the hospital after he was born. I participated in his birth, and when I came out of the hospital, the first thing I did was roll down the windows and scream. I just screamed. I've got a son. His name is Christopher.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you assisted, which was something that was really not common.
No, it was starting to be more and more common, because there were Lamaze courses and stuff like that. So
right.
You participated with your wife, and so then they encouraged you to participate in the birth, and my wife's doctor, by the way, he was very in tune to what it takes for a woman to give birth, and so he told me a lot. Her doctor told me a lot. And so he said, I want you to participate in it, because you need to understand what a woman actually goes through to bring a child into this world,
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I did, and it was great. It's great. Yeah.
So what, are there any other best moments?
That's one of my best moments.
Okay. Keep going if you have more.
And then all of the other best moments were
I'm sure you have more.
All of their successes. I mean, as a father, you want your kids to be healthy.
Mm-hmm.
You want them to be successful in whatever it is they endeavor. And so when they are, and you want them to be good people.
Sure.
So I've lucked out. I'm sorry. I've just lucked out. My kids are great people. We were able to participate in their successes,
mm-hmm.
and their happinesses. So yeah, that's been really great. My son's a businessman now, something that I would have aspired to be, and so he's kind of fulfilling a part of my life that I didn't get to do,
right?
And that's great. He's done a lot of things that I didn't get to do. So, and that's what you want as a father. You want your kids to go forward and be a little better than you were. And my both kids have satisfied that for me.
Well, that's great. But
yeah.
I have to wonder: are there any bad moments?
Yeah, of course there are bad moments, and some of the bad moments are not necessarily from an individual perspective, but because Chris comes from a large family on my side and a large family on his mom's side, there's been a lot of sadness. I'm the youngest in my family, my wife's the youngest in her family, and there's been a lot of sadness. And on my side of the family, there's been a lot of loss of life. So, when you're growing up, they say that there are 3 aspects of life that affect you most, and it's either loss of love, loss of life, loss of job. We had a lot of loss of life on our side from young people, and don't know why. Just happened, and then every time we went through those losses, we'd have to express them to our kids, and that was never easy. And then sometimes, when the kids were sad, as a parent, you kind of just want to just be there, and as a dad, as an individual, I like to try to fix things. You've probably seen that in the gym.
Yeah.
So I like to try to fix things, but so when you see your kids being sad and you can't fix it, you kind of just gotta take that inwardly, and that's kind of hard. So those are the worst things I've ever had to experience so far in life. With the kids as a father, their sadness, just trying to be there for them and comfort them. And try to make those sadnesses as as minimized as possible. But sometimes you can't affect that, right? It's
so then, what do you feel you've taught them in terms of how to deal with those types of losses? Because we model, what we do. I mean, our kids look at us and they go,
yeah.
How are they handling this joy, this success?
I'm not as stoic as my dad was, so I'm very, very emotional, and and because of my religious background, my beliefs, not religious, but my beliefs, I think that if you're feeling sadness, you can try to hold back a little bit, but sometimes you just can't. It just comes out, and that's the type of father I am. I'm not gonna hide that emotion. I think it's good for kids to see that this person who takes care of you, this person who feeds you, this person who fixes your bike, this person who gets you courses, this person who teaches you how to ride that bike, also has a sense of feeling. I think that's important for kids to see. So you try to minimize that as possible, like I say, but sometimes it's not possible to minimize it. Yeah. Right.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Did I answer your question?
You've answered everything.
Okay.
So I'm gonna really switch gears now. We've been great just talking the two of us, but we've left you completely in the dark here. Yeah. So I wanna switch over and get a sense of what your relationship, in your experience, your perspective, is with your dad.
So completely opposite to what my dad's relationship is with my grandfather.
Okay.
Completely opposite. So, my parents, my dad, my mom, both of them were always super supportive, super there, super involved, super there if you need them. Incredibly loving, all of those things. So that's what my relationship was like.
Okay.
I don't know how much else to explain it. It's like
no, that's good.
Stereotypical kind of like parenting, I guess. Like
okay.
This is how it's written type thing in movies and stuff. So yeah.
Okay, very, very idyllic. Okay.
Yeah, very idyllic. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, super idyllic.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
How do you think that molded who you've become and who you are?
You learn a lot. You learn a lot because you always have somebody there to teach you. So, and because they were always so involved, you just take pieces of everything they do. You see everything all the time. Like my dad just said, he doesn't hide anything. So emotions are always there. So you kind of experience everything all the way through, all the time. So I guess that's a great thing where you constantly have like a tutor through life type thing.
So there's nothing that you ever feel is, gee, I wish I would have asked, or okay.
No.
Okay, that's a great thing. Absolutely.
It is a great thing, and it doesn't seem like a great thing when you're a kid.
Yeah.
Okay, how so?
Well, like when you're young, you think, leave me alone. A lot of times. You know what I mean? When you're young and when you're a teenager, you're like, leave me alone.
You need that.
Well, yeah, for sure. But then when you're older, you realize that, that was the correct way. Because now I know this, and now I've done that, and now I've seen that, and now I'm better for it. But at the time, in the moment, you're like, stop.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay. You yourself have chosen not to become a dad.
Yeah.
Which is, depending upon where you ask and who you talk to. In some cases, that's super common. I mean, there's not a lot of people who want to have a lot of kids like it used to be, and some people are saying maybe just one kid. And then of course, there's your side where they say, no, I don't want to have kids. And sometimes it's for career, sometimes it's for other things. So
Yeah.
what's the process? What went through you?
So I actually wouldn't even use the word chosen.
Oh, okay.
Because I don't feel like it was a choice. When I was young, I always thought, okay, well, so when I was 16 or 17, let's say, I thought, okay, so around this time, I'm going to get married, and then after that, I'm going to have kids, and that's how things go.
Right,
and so
right.
on and so forth, right? And as I got older, it just kind of got away. It was like, you get busy, you start a career, you get busy with other things, and you're like, okay, well, now's not the time. And there was never the urge that pushed past the now's not the time feeling.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So
Right.
there was never for me a point where I was like, well, I need to do this now or else it's never going to happen. It was like, nope, now's not the time. And it was now's not the time, now's not the time, I guess that's because it's not for me. You know what I mean? Like you just go day to day and say, okay, what do I do today? And it's like, do I feel like jumping off a bridge? No, I'm not going to jump off a bridge, right? So it's kind of similar where day to day you go through your day to day and like say, this is now, this is next, this is next. And the kids never entered into this is next.
Is that a regret that you have in any way?
No, never.
So what do you think things would have been like had that urge kicked in? What do you think your life would have turned into?
Different.
Sure, but do you think that having a kid would have been something that you would have liked?
No, I think so. And I mean, I have this like career where I get to speak to and you know, kind of not assimilate, but integrate. I don't know what word I would use, but I deal with a lot of families. I deal with a lot of parents of many ages, you know, people whose kids are well grown and they have grandchildren and people who are giving birth for the first time. And so I see parents of all ages and all facets. And every reason that people have said to me that they have kids or they want kids, stuff like that, I've never felt like to do those things, I needed to have kids.
Can you give me an example?
You know, people have said to me, like, you know, I want to have kids so that I can, you know, affect the next generation or something like that. I'm like, well, I don't need to have kids to do that.
Right.
I can do that through my daily interactions with people. I can do that through the business I own and hiring people and different things like that. You know, that type of thing. So I've never had the, you know, and every other reason that I haven't been able to kind of rationalize as well, I can do that without kids.
Right.
Every other reason has been like a selfish reason.
Like
I need someone to take care of me when I'm older. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm not going to need that.
Right.
So I'm just not going to do that. You know what I mean? Like people who, at one point, you know, we were thinking about adopting when we were younger. Because we said, well, if we're going to do the kid thing, why don't we just adopt? Because there's so many kids out there that need a second chance or need a chance. Why don't we just do it that way? And unfortunately in Canada, there's like huge barriers to that. And so it never happened. But then other people would say, well, why wouldn't you just have your own? It's like, well, why would I have my own? What's the difference? Don't you want something that's of yourself? And da-da-da-da. I'm like, why? I don't understand that kind of like mentality.
Right.
And I view it as a bit kind of like egotistical. Like it's like I need it to be my blood and I need it to be my this. And I'm like, no, that's not me. So that was never a reason either. So the reasons that people had that I couldn't rationalize out, like it was either I don't need that or I can do that without kids. So then...
So then I have to ask Dag, now that you've heard all of this, which I'm sure is not new information for you. What do you think of that?
I think that's my son, Christopher.
Okay.
Like I've told you before, everybody's an individual. And I love my, when, before Christopher and my daughter Natalie came into the world, it was just me and my wife, right? When I had Christopher and Natalie, they were blessings.
Right.
On their own, right?
Mm-hmm.
I still have that blessing. Thank God.
Right.
He's still with me.
Okay. And that there won't be.
He's enjoying life. He is giving of himself to other people.
Okay.
I have the opportunity to go to a gym and watch him work with customers, and he's really into helping that person. I think it's great. I mean, if ever there was a moment where he and Laura had a child, for whatever reason, either adopted or whatever, it's kind of like gravy. It's gravy, because I'm really happy with what I have right now. So the fact that he's not having a child, for me, that's neither here nor there.
Okay.
It's really neither here nor. My family name is Ince.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If that family name stops with Christopher, it's fine with me.
Okay.
It's stopping with an amazing person in life, an amazing good person. So if the last family member of my family is Christopher, thank God. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's fine.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay.
And so, like Christopher said, some people want a child to carry on your name.
Mm.
Your name lives forever. Whether you have a child or not, you've got a name.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of think, from my perspective, a lot of the world is very egotistical. Nations actually try to continue as a nation that way by, we still have to have an Ince. We have to have a McDonald. We have to have a Kaufman, Or the Kaufman name has to continue until the end of time.
Right.
Why? Until the end of time. Why do Kaufmans have to exist? Or the Inces have to exist till the end of time?
Yeah.
Why can it not end with Farrell?
Right.
Why cannot it end with Farrell? And the world will know that there was a family, Farrell, and it ended with, Kaufmans, and it ended with Farrell Kaufman.
Right.
It's fine.
Okay.
For me, from my perspective.
Right.
And like I told you, we were blessed. I feel we were blessed with the 2 children that we have. If that's the way it ends, then that's the way it ends.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
It's fine. And I think for all the reasons that Christopher said, that he doesn't have a child right now or whatever, that's just my son. And I know the way he thinks.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the way he thinks. Got a great mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I want to keep going by having the 2 of you answer some of these questions. There's just a few more.
Yeah.
What kind of concerns do the 2 of you have for the future? And when I say that, of course it can mean anything, but what I mean more is, time moves on. We get older.
Mm-hmm.
Things change. Things happen. What kind of concerns do the 2 of you have for your futures together or your futures separately?
Go ahead.
It's funny because you sent these questions ahead of time, so I had them, in my head.
So you're going to be brilliant right now?
No, it's not going to be brilliant. It's not brilliant. It's just funny because I laughed at a lot of the questions. Like, to myself, I laughed because it doesn't sound like all my answers sound kind of made up.
Okay.
But I don't have any concerns for the future.
Okay.
I don't have any concerns because I don't think so much about that. I feel like if you're going to be dwelling on concerns, it's a shit ton to be concerned about. But if you do that, you're never moving forward. You're going to stop dead in your tracks and nothing's going to happen.
Right.
So I'd rather just not concern myself and just keep moving forward. And what will be, will be.
Right.
So it's not a concern thing. Whatever's going to happen in the future is going to happen.
Right.
So I'm just going to keep moving forward. I don't know. Like, obviously, there's things you can control. You can control your actions, and you can control, those things. But there's a lot of variables out there that you can't control. So if you're concerned about your own actions, that doesn't make much sense because they're your actions. So just act, right?
Right.
To concern yourself with other people's actions is ridiculous. Like other people are going to do what they do regardless of what you do. So
Right.
it's a bit weird to concern yourself with it, right? Like you can try and affect change. And again, that's your actions. But ultimately, the decision will be whatever the decision is. So
Right.
I don't really concern myself with things.
Okay. that's fair. I can see why you laughed when I said that question.
Exactly.
But what about? Let's narrow the focus down a little bit.
Okay.
In terms of the future in your relationship, because as we've seen, it's very solid. It's a great father-son relationship.
Yeah.
But is there anything in the future that you go, I'm concerned about health, or I'm concerned about something?
No.
For the two of you.
Personally, no.
Okay.
Again, I mean, like, my parents are the reason I'm in the health industry.
Why is that?
Well, because they were always super healthy growing up. My dad was very active. My mom was active. Some of my first memories were my mom working out, like even before I was in school. At home, we always had weights at the house and
Wow.
stuff like that. Even as a little boy, push-ups, all these things. Like that's what I was taught. Being put into sports, exercise was always important. When I took taekwondo or karate, my dad was taking taekwondo or karate at the same time. Just adult classes over there and the kids classes over there, but you're both there. So health was always one of the top priorities. So I'm not concerned about, again, like, they're going to be healthier than 99% of people their age because of their actions, and anything else that might happen is out of our control. So yeah.
Okay, so no concerns on either side for things that you go, gee, I wonder what the future's going to hold. And
well, Christopher, he says that he just says that he saw us working out, my mom, my wife and myself when he was younger. But when Christopher was born, and I honestly believe this, I think that his character was already made.
Right.
Christopher would rather have a tangerine than a piece of cake when he was young. That was his snack. He'd rather have a tangerine, and we didn't tell him that.
Mm-hmm.
It was just Christopher.
Right.
He would go in the fridge and grab an orange instead of go and grab cookies.
But do you think maybe he saw that?
No.
Okay.
I'm
just wondering.
Yeah, my wife.
Kids often, when they're very young,
yeah,
they repeat
my
what they
wife's
see,
an amazing cook.
I think
that it was.
You saw as well?
Yeah, I think.
Oh, I mean, we didn't. No, in retrospect, my wife was an amazing cook. But during the week, and we still do that now, we try to stay away from a lot of cookies and a lot of baking. That would be mostly on the weekend type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
When they were going to school, Susan would always rather bake a cookie and give it to them to bring to school than to go and purchase processed foods, and or give them a tangerine or an apple, with their lunch, and this type of stuff. So maybe it transferred, but as a child, he did. He's saying it's because of us, but. He used to just go in the fridge and grab a tangerine and or an orange, and that was what he liked, So,
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, describe your dad's parenting style.
I mean, I don't know if there's names to styles. I don't know
Well,
how
describe
that
it.
works.
Like, is he? I'll give you some. Was he very hands-on?
Yes.
Did he ever try to teach you things on purpose, or was it always just kind of you pick things up?
Both. Yeah.
Okay. And you always found that he was present.
Yeah.
Patient?
Yes and no. I mean, there's always times where you lose your patience.
Right, we're human beings.
Yeah, and if you have children, I can only imagine that you lose your patience a lot.
Right. Okay. All right.
At certain points, but I mean, that's like a lesson in itself, right?
Yeah.
Kids, I think, probably, I mean, I'm pretty sure, try to, see where the line is.
Yeah. Push the boundaries.
Right.
Right.
And then when the parent gets impatient, you're like, there it is.
I can go this far.
Exactly.
Yeah, no further.
When I see other parents today, I feel like that's not there as much.
Okay, what do you see?
I see more kind of like, I see less kind of like, this is it. This is the line. You've gone too far. And I see more kind of like negotiation and kind of like, okay, oh, do you feel this is where you should be? Okay, let's try and figure out how we get you there type thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
Instead of, no, that's not where you go. That's too far.
Yeah.
You don't go there.
Okay.
Right.
And that's the end of the conversation type thing, Yeah, I see the kids being in a lot more control where they shouldn't be in control type thing.
Okay. So that kids shouldn't have that say at all, or that...
Not until a certain age. No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Not at all.
Okay. All right. I want to ask the two of you for pearls of wisdom. Okay. So, what kind of advice? What kind of advice would you give to fathers these days, to men these days?
Oh, to men these days.
Yeah. And then I'm going to ask you the same question. So this is a chance for you to...
Yeah.
It's okay to show your kids and tell your kids that you love them, but mean it. But mean it. Really mean it. Don't just say I love you just for the sake of saying I love you, and that's what you're supposed to say. Really mean it. It has to come from the heart. And if, like Christopher said, you want to ask your child, well, where do you think you should be? Are you where you think you should be right now, or how can I get you to where you want to be? That's fine. You can do that. If a parent, because like I said at the beginning, everybody's an individual. Some parents know their kids and cannot allow them, or may not think it's best for them to give them that latitude to decide where they want to be, type of thing, In retrospect, when I was being brought up, and because we were 8 kids, and because, my father had only a Sunday, the Sunday dinner was, children are supposed to be seen and not heard.
Right.
And I remember repeating that with Christopher and his sister. And then after saying that, I felt ridiculous.
Right.
I felt ridiculous afterwards because your question was...
pearls of wisdom for men and dads.
And I said everything should come from a position of love, and I really mean that. So when you come from a position of love, let your children speak. You can learn something from your children. It's really important. I learned a lot from Christopher, and I've learned a lot from Nathan. I'll give you just one example. I remember Christopher had moved out. He had already become a personal trainer, and so he felt that it was more beneficial to be on the other side of the bridge than this side of the bridge in Chateauguay, in Montreal instead of Chateauguay because it was easier to get to the customers and clients. Natalie was coming up, and I think Christopher was 21. I think Natalie must have been around 17, 18. And I think we were trying to impress more upon Natalie, some of the things we wanted her to do. And Christopher stepped in and said, Natalie's not like me, guys. You have to, don't put the same restrictions or expectations on Natalie, as you did on me. We learned from that. And and so it helped us to better understand Natalie as well. So when I say come from a position of love, allow your children to speak. It's okay for the father to be nurturing as well, but understand that, and this is me talking, women were actually put on the earth for that. It's maybe another
No.
podcast.
It could be, but I'd like to hear where you're going with this. I think maybe Chris would too.
Okay. And a lot of countries feel this way, that it's the male that's supposed to dominate everything.
Right.
It's not true.
But that's becoming more of the dinosaur view,
the most basic human aspect of a human being. The woman was made to bear a child, and the man was made to provide the seed. That's all. Provide the seed and support. Provide the seed and support and nurture and love that woman that you gave the seed to.
Mm-hmm.
The woman, her whole body changes because you've given her that seed. Her whole body changes. Women are maternal, very maternal. And from a very, very basic position, men are there to provide the seed, provide the support for that woman to successfully bring her family up. And I think that women should be held in a much higher position than they are. Because they were chosen. If they weren't chosen, Walter or Christopher or Pharaoh would be able to give birth. And we're not able to. Because it was the woman that was chosen to give the birth. And I believe that a woman's position in this world should be held at a higher level than it has been throughout history. And I think there are a lot of countries that think that the male is supposed to dominate. And there are some families where the male needs to dominate. But then there are other families where it should be on a mutual level. And
Okay.
That's where I come from. And
right.
So pearls of wisdom.
You've given us a whole bunch already.
Yeah, well, it's my wisdom. It's not the world's wisdom. It's just from my perspective.
Yeah.
So, and I just feel that come from a position of love. And just love your kids. It's amazing when you just love your kids. You'll see so much come back, as I've been fortunate to have witnessed. Yeah.
Okay, I've seen so many different changes going on in your face while your dad was talking. So I'd love to hear you respond to that, but also the first part of the question too.
Which is pearls of wisdom?
Yeah.
So pearls of wisdom as what?
As a man, because
as a man.
Yeah, because we see the whole idea of what a man is. It's not that man that you were talking about who was before of being dominant and having to be strong and so on. The whole question of a man's identity is what is it? It's so fluid that it doesn't seem to have any definition.
Yeah, I disagree. So I think that definition was just done there, but it's not the definition of like a certain time ago, maybe. But when you say like before, I don't know when before was, because as my dad was saying, how women should be put on a certain pedestal and so on and so forth, and they should be up there and that's what I always saw growing up. So we're talking like if I go back, people talk today about equality and stuff like that, but like I grew up in the 80s and that's what I saw. So why fuck is taking everybody else so long?
Right. Well,
You know
because
what I
I
mean?
grew up in the 80s too, and that's what I started seeing as well. So when I say before, I mean prior to that, because in the 70s it began,
So in the 70s, so that-
it
right,
began
but
to
then-
slowly change
But then
towards the
when
end.
did my dad learn that?
That's the question.
You know what I mean? Like, so
Yeah.
it must have been before the 80s. It must have been in the 70s. So I'm like, I don't know how long ago we have to go back
Right.
to see that this has always been the case. So it's like, what are we waiting for? It's obviously an institutional problem. It has nothing to do with the family aspect or the man aspect. You know, I see it a lot still, and it always boggles my mind. So, like, Laura and I, we take turns cooking dinner. Whoever's home first cooks dinner. That is shocking to people
Really?
that I cook dinner.
What do people say when you say that?
People are like, he cooks dinner? You cook dinner? Yeah, I cook dinner. Why wouldn't I cook dinner?
I get that too. I get that same.
and it's like, it's like, so the shock that I see in people is so much more shocking to me because like, that's what I grew up with. Like, how do you go on? Like, how do you manage if you don't act that way? You know what I mean? Like, I also do dishes when it's time to do dishes and laundry if I have to do laundry. Like, why? It's a team effort. And that's one thing, like, as a man, I feel that I learned, like it's a huge thing that I learned from my father, that it doesn't seem to, like, translate a lot these days. Like, should be more people that have learned that by now. If
You'd
I
think.
learned it in the 80s, then why don't more people know it now? That's what I don't understand.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's my kind of pearl of wisdom, is that it's a partnership. It's an equal partnership throughout life, and you know, that's the only way to manage. Like, it's supposed to be a team. It's supposed to be, you know, and on a team, obviously, there's different roles.
Yeah.
And you should know your role, but at the same time, like, you're equal partners throughout the whole thing. You each have to pull your own weight, you know, all those things. I mean, it's not
It's basic.
as much as, you know, okay, the man is the supporter or whatever my dad was saying, and that's, you know, true. But there still needs to be a recognition that the woman can also be the supporter
Absolutely.
if she needs to be. Like, in my case, right, we don't have the child, so then we're really on even playing field.
Right.
We're partners in the business, and it's like we have equal standing. So, and I think that's cool because you don't have to, like, I don't have the stress of being a sole provider or a sole this or a sole that. And I also learned that from my parents as well. Like, both my parents worked growing up. They both did their thing. It was the same thing. Whoever got home first was, like, on duty type thing. It was like, whoever was home first when we got home, that's a person. And, you know, vice versa. So yeah, as a pearl of wisdom as a man is, yeah, we definitely respect the woman a lot more, because it doesn't seem to be translating. But I think that is a man thing. I think that is a definition of a man thing.
Is what exactly?
Is to respect a woman.
Okay.
Like, you have to be, the man has to respect a woman.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, that's my, I guess that's my pearl of wisdom.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say.
No, that's good. That's good. Is there anything either one of you want to add? Any? Yeah.
I would. A lot of people will say that women can multitask like crazy. It's just inherent in their nature to be able to multitask. So they can be mothers, they can be supporters, you know, they can be providers, they can be great friends, you know, and great lovers, and they can be all of it. Men too, we can be the same thing, but from a physiological standpoint, we were made to be the physical supporter and protector, right? We're bigger, we're stronger, and so I just think that from a basic standpoint, we were made to do that, and so understand where you come from. Is what I would say as a man. Understand where you come from, and understand what your role is in life, and try to act with love.
Okay. Any last words, Chris? I saw a couple of interesting.
Yeah, because I hope so too, because I always loved. You know, we have Sunday dinners and Christopher comes and Laura, and I love to listen to them talk. I just love to listen to them talk because, as a parent, you know, their entourage in life and the things that they experience in life are not necessarily the things that my wife and I have experienced.
Sure.
So when they come for Sunday dinner, it's great. I love the conversation. So that's what everybody has to say.
Yeah, not much more. I just agree with everything. So, I mean,
Awesome.
I just kind of agree with all that.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, not much to add there.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I just want to thank you both again for doing this and for giving us a big snapshot of your lives and what the two of you mean to each other.
I got something that.
Now I was segueing into a beautiful finish, and that's fine. Go ahead.
One of the things that I see a lot of, so when I'm training parents and interacting with them, and they're telling me stories about their kids, and they say, you know, the story, and they're very distraught by the situation that they're in with their child, and then I laugh. And they're like, it's not funny. And I say, it is funny to me because I know where this is going in the end.
Okay.
And it's going to be fine. And you don't think it's going to be fine right now because you're in the moment and it's very disturbing. And your child doesn't think it's going to be fine right now because they're in that moment. But it's going to be fine. And that's one of the things that I see that is one of the biggest lessons. Things like that you take for granted when you're young, when you're a teenager. Things that you think are a bad decision by your parents when you're young and when you're a teenager, they end up being the right thing. Like when you're older, you're like, oh fuck, they were right.
Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah.
That was correct. Like, you know, and so it's funny that, so now it's funny because if you could just tell those kids, you know, you're going to be wrong. Like, you're pissed right now, you're wrong.
Yeah.
It's going to go the other way as you get older. That would be like a pearl of wisdom I have as a son to other sons, that they should respect their parents' kind of like decisions a little bit more because they're right. Then it will end up being right in the end, whether you like it or not.
Right.
But in that same respect, parents should make decisions.
Yeah.
Not just defer and not just look for a way out and not just look to compromise, but like make a decision because you're right. You've been through it. The child hasn't been through it. So you're right. You have all the information. The child does not. So make the decision because that's your role. You're the parent.
Right.
You're bringing up the child.
Right.
Make a decision. You have the info.
Right.
And then the child will see eventually that, yeah, that was the right call at the time because I didn't have the info. Now I have the info and I can see that was the right call.
Right.
So
Okay.
that's that.
Okay. All right. So now I'm going to try to segue back into a good ending. So much covered, so much said. I guess the last thing that I'm going to do, which is the thing that I do with every episode, is I end off with a weekly challenge for all of the listeners. So my challenge this week is to stop and ask yourself, and not to beat yourself up over this, but to stop and ask yourself if the choices that you're making for you and for your loved ones, your kids, your significant other, if you're coming from a place of love when you do this. It's okay to be wrong, but it's not okay to not come from a place of love. So be kind to yourself, be kind to them, be kind to everybody. And I will be talking at you again next episode with other guests. So until then, signing off from Man to Dad.